Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime performance is the most watched halftime show of all time. And if you log into social media, it's also one of the most polarizing. But when you start to peel back the layers and understand some of the deeper symbolism in the whole purpose of the show, it was meant to be that way. As a creator, it's one of my jobs to stay tapped into social media. To keep an eye on the trends, on the stories, to figure out what I'm going to do, what I'm going to break down for the day, what content I'm going to cover. And the longer I do this job, the more you start to see and just recognize patterns and trends of how different people in power, how different influencers really try to use social media as a weapon in order to bend narratives and try to influence public opinion. And in relation to the halftime show, you could definitely see it. You could definitely see those in Kendrick's camp trying to uplift the halftime show, trying to influence it and put their positive spin on it. You can also see the roots of a organized campaign that I would put money that Drake is behind, trying to influence some negative biases, some negative reactions and reviews, and the stories that are shared in the way that people are consuming and understanding this halftime show. And as someone who's always trying to get to the truth, as someone who always tries to step back and look at things logically, what better way to understand this halftime show than from the source itself? So who better than Dave Free, co-founder of PG Lang and Kendrick Lamar's partner? The Wall Street Journal just did a really interesting interview with him, so we're going to dive into it and talk about this right now. Would he play it? The question hovered over the Super Bowl even after Kendrick Lamar had kicked off the halftime show. The rapper knew exactly what his audience wanted to hear, teasing snippets from Not Like Us, his most famous diss track from a nearly year-long public beef with fellow rapper Drake. Audience anticipation crescendoed towards a climatic, thundering performance of the Grammy-winning song, featuring a dancing Serena Williams. And speaking of that whole media machine and social media narrative manipulation, you could see that agenda happening with Serena Williams and the way that she's getting attacked. But we'll dive into that in another video again. We wanted this performance to have a cinematic and theatrical element to it, said Dave Free, Lamar's creative collaborator and co-founder of creative agency PG Lang, in an interview ahead of the show. We can confidently say that there's no Super Bowl performance that's quite like this one. And yeah, I would have to agree. And I pointed out in my original breakdown of this, so many Super Bowl halftime shows are about the hits, right? They're a play it safe game. They're really like a celebration of the artist. It's almost like a victory lap. Like you take your most popular tracks that everyone wants to sing along to, and you just do it bigger and on a much grander stage, with pyrotechnics, with dancers, with just extravagance and everything happening. Kendrick Lamar didn't take that route at all. He didn't sit there and just play the hits. Every song choice was thought out. Right? The way the stage was laid out, it was scaled back, it was simplified, but there was so much layered symbolism and details throughout and Easter eggs that we're still uncovering and still finding. And I think that's perhaps where a lot of people were thrown off. And that's where the risk comes in, because we're so used to not having to think, to just sit there and enjoy the halftime show. All of a sudden you have a halftime show where people have to sit there and process, and it challenges their brains and it makes them really start to think deeper about what's going on and what they're witnessing. And not everybody's programmed for that. Not everybody's used to that. So yeah, there's a huge risk. And obviously that's going to get backlash. But I think as time goes on, much in the same way that we really start to appreciate classic albums, do they stand the test of time? With the test of time with this, more and more Easter eggs get revealed, more and more details, and you really see just the creative genius and thought process behind all of this. Everything was measured. Everything had a layer and a meaning to it. A Pulitzer Prize winner, Lamar is the first rapper to headline a Super Bowl halftime show on his own, which is huge in and of itself. And his creative team wanted to make a statement with the historic performance. Free said that the show was meant to evoke the Black experience in America. I mean, come on. Lamar loves his dates. The pop-out concert on Juneteenth, right? The significance of that. Performing in the Super Bowl on Black History Month. You don't think that wasn't on his mind? That wasn't important and key for him in motivating his performance and what he was going to do? Samuel L. Jackson, the legendary actor, introduced the show dressed as Uncle Sam, and dancers dressed in red, white, and blue formed an American flag in the middle of the field. And we talked about that imagery of Kendrick in the middle of the flag, almost representing a country divided. And then obviously you see the dancers, the way that they're lining out. You have an America that was built on the backs of slavery. You have an America that was built through the hard work and has foundations in roots and contributions to Black America, right? Kendrick Lamar coming out talking about 40 acres and a mule. The promise that was never fulfilled, the carrot that was dangled, but it was never sought through. And you look at a history of discrimination, a history of violence, a history of division. There were so many more powerful messages at work, even sort of Samuel L. Jackson and his character representing Uncle Sam, but then also calling back to to sort of the Uncle Tom analogy, right? And trying to tell Kendrick how he's supposed to be, almost having sort of like a white America expectation on how hip hop music is supposed to be, how a lot of industry execs and record labels will water down the hip hop experience so that it's more digestible for middle America. So that's more digestible for a mainstream audience. And then there's that critique of consumerism and that whole tie-in with obviously the reason that the music is watered down is because it's all geared towards profits. But this wasn't a statement about profits. This was a statement against that. This was a statement against consumerism. This was a statement against those currents and those movements within the music industry. This was a statement for the culture, for MCing, for rap, for hip-hop. Lamar's path to the Super Bowl stage began with a call from Jay-Z, Free said. As the NFL's live music entertainment strategist, Jay-Z plays perhaps the biggest role in deciding who performs at the halftime show. In 2022, Lamar was a part of a halftime medley with Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Mary J. Blige, Eminem performing hits like All Right. I left 50 Cent out of that. Isn't that funny? Free said he wasn't sure Lamar would be asked to perform at the game again too soon, but it felt like the right time for us. Free and Lamar watch every single Super Bowl halftime performance, drawing particular cues from Beyonce, Prince, amazing halftime show, and Michael Jackson's headline shows. And Kendrick actually beat Michael Jackson's record because he was the most watched previously. The feel of it is Black America. Free said of Kendrick's show, what does Black America look like and how to control that narrative of what it means to be Black in America versus the world's perspective of that is. I mean, that's a hell of a statement to make. And that's the pivotal role of Samuel L. Jackson's character, right? That's the meta commentary coming through of that. That's him trying to control what the Black narrative is supposed to be in America. That's the industry, the label. That's America itself almost telling, no, this is what rap is supposed to be. And it's sort of Kendrick's chance to not listen to Samuel L. Jackson throughout it, to make a statement. And the thing is, he never responds directly to Samuel L. Jackson. I really find that interesting. It's almost like Samuel L. is talking to him. And it's like Kendrick is taking all this on board. But instead of responding directly in conversation or replying back, he responds through his music. He responds through his art and lets his art make the statements that he needs to say. That message threaded through details like wardrobe and choreography. Sanchez said Lamar wanted nods to Los Angeles and street culture and less uniformity for background players. I mean, shout out to the Bay as well. It wasn't just Los Angeles. It was a true celebration of the West Coast. I mean, he featured the same people and the same dancers that he had in his Squabble Up video. And we talked about the double meanings and the layers to the red, white, and blue, right? Not just being the colors of the American flag, the reds and the blues, the bloods and the crips. Kendrick Lamar, much in the same way he did at the Pop Out concert, you know, uniting those gang cultures, bringing different colors together. You even had this beautiful moment for Man at the Garden when you just had the dancers in all white behind them. And if you go back to the meanings that Kendrick said on his Good Kid, Mad City album, when people speculated, what do those acronyms mean? Well, one of them was My Angels on Angels Dust. Samuel L. Jackson shortly afterwards going Deduct One Life. You can see that this is definitely representation of the angels and those who have been lost, now ascended to heaven behind him. And shout out to Justin Hutton, the company man, yet again for putting me onto this one. But he speculated that Man at the Garden is actually Kendrick at a cemetery. I mean, that's haunting and that's beautiful at the same time. Everything has to be choreographed, even the unseen moments with camera. The performance is televised, but it is also for the people in the audience, so every moment matters and it has to be right. And speaking of the media manipulation machine, I saw some people and streamers trying to say, oh, nobody was vibing to it at the halftime show, nobody was enjoying it. But I tell you what, it's a shame I couldn't afford it, but I would have loved to have had the opportunity to have been there, to have seen it from just sort of that bird's eye view, to really see all the different levels and angles and elements to it, because you could tell from the PlayStation controller setup to just the choreography, the colors, the messages behind, like the game over that was read. There was so much happening in a singular moment in time. And it's so true. And I love that approach though, that, you know, on one hand, we have this story and we have this art that we have to convey for the camera because there's going to be millions watching at home. But also, we still have a stadium full of people that we have to entertain and that we have to find a way to just blend these two worlds together. And that is not an easy task and not an easy process at all. The Super Bowl halftime show is no ordinary live show. Production designers had to consider factors such as protecting the stadium grass from sets and making sure the air quality wouldn't be adversely affected by special effects. To keep the weight of the sets light, designers used aluminum and steel frames. I mean, it's fascinating how much goes into this. Our stages and scenic elements are all pushed into the stadium and onto the field by almost 500 stagehands, says Bruce Rogers, a production designer. Lamar's performance marks Rogers' 19th Super Super Bowl halftime show. His first being 2007 when Prince headlined. And isn't it funny with the Kendrick and Drake beef, right? The Michael Jack to Prince sort of comparisons throughout that battle, right? And Drake in first-person shooter representing Michael Jackson, right? And having sort of the flexes and the visual callbacks to that with the glove and just with his record setting. And then Kendrick Lamar invoking Prince and his response and his layers to how he did everything. And here we go yet again, tying back to all that and how it really comes around full circle within the Super Bowl halftime show. I also saw a post, and I'm not too sure about the validity of this, but this has been shared as well, that the pyrotechnics weren't allowed to go through because Donald Trump was there. And since he was there, they had to take that away, and that was a big planned part of the set. So that's part of it that was definitely a key element that was missing. Free said the team wanted to feature songs that would make viewers curious to learn more about Lamar as an artist. It wasn't about playing the hits, Free said. Well, if you look at the fact that Kendrick now has 3 albums on the top 10 for the Billboard charts, and he's setting records with that. Also, the resurgence and reemergence of GNX to #1. I would say that that mission was very well achieved. And that's the thing. You didn't have like the swimming pools. You didn't have the All Rights. You didn't have a number of tracks I really sincerely thought would be a part of this set. You had a real celebration of GNX, but also GNX was very relevant to the message. GNX was very potent and powerful for the layers that Kendrick wanted to get across. And like we said earlier, I mean, it's a hell of a risk and a hell of a strategy to go, yeah, hit records, bump that. We don't need it. Let's make this about the MCing. Let's make this about the art. And hell, we even got some new verses. We even got some new bars. We even got just classic hits that were rearranged musically, right? They were remixed on one of the world's biggest stages. This whole event and halftime show was nothing but a huge risk. Except for one, of course. I want to perform their favorite song, but you know they love to sue. Lamar quipped during his set. In January, Drake filed a lawsuit against Universal Music Group, his and Lamar's parent music label, calling Not Like Us defamatory. Which, yes, I don't lose the irony that Drake is suing over a diss track, and we just did a breakdown of him firing shots yet again and throwing more subliminal disses. When he finally launched into Not Like Us, he led the crowd in a sing-along of its most famous verse, trying to strike a chord, and it's probably A minor. And I said this, it's very tactical what part of your song you're going to pick, because you only get like 15, 20 seconds of that song before you move on to the next one. So it's very important what aspect of the track you choose to highlight. No coincidence that he picked that part. The finale sent the stadium into darkness, revealing the phrase "Game Over," written against the crowd in lights. There was still half a game to go. No, the game was over at that point. But in his own battle, Lamar had crowned himself the winner. And again, I've seen manipulation, I've seen spin of people going, I can't believe he just made the show about Drake. I can't believe that he performed his biggest hit song that he literally just won 5 Grammys for. I mean, what did you think he was going to do? And yes, a lot of this show was addressing Drake. A lot of this show was a huge just final F you to Drake and final rebuttal to everything. But that's only one lens and one way to look at it. Much in the same way of his battle with Drake throughout this beef. It's not just about Drake. There was a greater message and a greater theme that Kendrick Lamar was trying to convey. And for me, that game over is not just directed at Drake. That game over is showing he is not going to play this game. He is not going to do what the Uncle Sam's, what the expectation is of him, as Samuel L. Jackson was trying to direct him, right? He's no longer interested in playing that game. This wasn't just a critique of Drake on the world's biggest stage. This was a critique of America. This was a direct look at its history. This was a look at the black struggle, at his identity. This was a look at hip hop and how he's using his art to continue to stand for a greater message and to reflect his values and to try to enact the change and try to enact the empowerment that he wants to see through his brand of music. But anyways, let me know what you guys think of the halftime show now that you've had a chance to digest it, to sit down, to maybe rewatch it, to think about it. What do you think of all the stories that are being spun online? What's your feeling? What's your take on it? Comment down below. Also, if you're here at the end, don't forget to support the channel. Subscribe, notifications on. Really does go a long way. Cop your merch. knoxhillmusic.com. We got hats, we got shirts, we got hoodies, we got everything that you need if you want to rep the brand, if you want to get it out there. It all helps. It all goes a long way. All right, everybody. Stay safe. Stay positive. Take care of your energy. Take care of your mentals. I love you. I'll catch you again.
Sit down, sit down. I'm like, wow, how we do it like that? Like, wow, how we do it like that? Like, wow, how we do it like that? Like, wow, better sit your ass down.